The Last Supper by Joseph Elms. Fergie had peaked in S6, but 4 years later he was still to realise that his moment was behind him. When he went to the hairdressers, he still got a two at the sides and thinned out on top. He wouldn't have known what else to ask for, even if he had wanted something different. If it was raining and he couldn't style his fringe, then he wore a baseball cap all day, even at the dinner table or while watching TV with his girlfriend. At 21st, the previous summer, a schoolmate of his, who had joined the army as a Christmas leaver, had asked him if he'd still worked in the supermarket. Fergie told him that he did, 2 weekdays now in addition to the Saturday shift that he did while in school, and that it would do him just now until he applied for the fire brigade. Turned into a right dead end for you, the squaddy had laughed, before Fergie had had the chance to explain the fire brigade part. What Fergie found most astonishing was the cheek of the wee dick. He wouldn't have dared speak to him like that back in school. Fergie and his pals had a trick that involved one of the persons in the group getting on all fours behind a wee nerd or geek or a dafty without them noticing. You could then give them the gentlest push and they would deck at a belter with their legs in the air. If the boys had been there at that party, then that's exactly what they would have done. Although, maybe not. The army seemed to have taught this lad sustained eye contact and given him those muscles that go from the side of your neck to your shoulders. It had bothered him, that comment. Fergie remembered that at a meeting with the careers advisor in the library, somebody had said that they'd wanted to be an entrepreneur when they were older. This had caught his attention to the extent they had looked up for the paper plane that he was making. That sounded like a cool thing to tell people. I'm an entrepreneur. That word had stuck with him, and it came swimming back to the surface in the weeks after the party. After one hanging another, and against the wishes of his girlfriend, Fergie had bought a chip van. The main reason why Madison Lee was so against the idea of a chip van was because she already worked in a chippy. She knew that when Fergie started talking about having a sound system, a private registration, a mural on the back doors and alloys, they wasn't thinking about peeling tatties with aching wrinkly horns, counting out stacks of manky coins, stinking aprons and hair, or spitting oil. Plus, she was hoping to work a few hours over the next 7 months rather than more, but she hadn't found the right moment to tell him that yet. She agreed to support the plan to buy the chip van, regardless of her reservations or her embarrassment. She'd have loved him if he was a postman or a bus driver or a shelf stacker, and she told him that all the time. He told her that he loved her too, but wait until you see how well this was going to work out for them both. They sold their car, and she borrowed money for Dad. Fergie quit the supermarket, and they bought a chip van and rented the yard. 3 weeks and a day later, and Fergie had a hangover that felt like his heart and his guts were in his skull, his bones stiff and his raw nerves exposed to the wind and drizzle. If he'd smoked a fag, it would have made him vomit. It was 3 in the afternoon. If it hadn't been almost dark, then his shadow would have been his reflection. A car leaving the mechanic's shed bounced down one of the deep potholes in the road next to Fergie and splashed brown water up in his coat and his face. He searched his keys for the right one, for the padlock, for the chain that lashed the gates to the yard, but the right one kept evading him within the bunch like a magician's foam ball does when it's under sliding cups. On the sagging fence beside the gate, seagulls watched him fuddle with the keys. They squawked and hooted in amusement. When he eventually unfastened the padlock, the chain slinked through his hands and fell into the mud at his feet. A poly bag, which had been hunting through the wind, splattered against the fence and made the sound of a child blowing raspberries. Climbing into the van replaced one set of problems with another set of problems. There was a mucky bag of tatties on the driver's seat and 2 polystyrene cases of fish and ice slid up the galley. Fergie put his head in his hands. He checked his phone and then started trying to organise his work. He done things in an illogical order and made his life harder than it needed to be. At least this is the last time, he thought, to reassure himself. Fergie had met Riley in the kitchen of a party the night before. Riley had come to the party to drop off a bank card and had come into the kitchen when he had spotted Fergie standing in there alone. He'd introduced himself and asked him if everything was okay. Fergie was glad to have eventually attracted an audience and explained to Riley all about his new business. "Mate, there's easier ways to make money," Riley had explained, and then enthusiastically gone into great detail about several other scams and operations which were far more lucrative and far less greasy. Copies were a big business, and all you needed was a computer and blank discs. Obviously that's an expensive outlay to buy the original CDs, but you can just pay people to steal them at the supermarket or at Woolworths. The same outlay problem was true of a dial-a-booze, because you had to get a small van, a Fiat Uno or a Citroen Visa, a cash and carry membership, your initial stock, and a business card with your mobile number on it to dish out. It also had the opportunity for upselling, according to Riley, who had noticed by carefully watching Fergie's face that this was the idea which seemed to get a response. "Listen, here's what we'll do, and you'll be minted in no time," cooed Riley, before outlining a precise plan which involved a second-hand car, identity theft and insurance fraud. The van was sitting in darkness when Madison Lee got to the yard straight for rain work. She startled Fergie when she opened the passenger door and the internal light came on. His hands flew up to make sure that his cap was pulled on properly. She leaned in and peered between the seats into the galley. None of the preparation work was done, and only superficial cleaning. "What have you been doing?" she challenged him. "What?" Fergie replied, preoccupied with his phone. "None," she sighed. "Turn on the engine so I can see what I'm doing," she said. Madison Lee climbed in, hung her outdoor jacket over the headrest of the passenger seat, and tightened the strings on her apron. Within half an hour, the chip van looked and felt the way Fergie used to describe it when it was first just an idea. Madison Lee had scrubbed the counter, organised the newspapers and brown greaseproof paper below the counter, and cleverly using a flattened cardboard box to separate them and prevent them from jumbling when they went round a corner. She had steeped the utensils, mopped the galley floor, and was now carefully writing an amusing pun on the chalkboard that sat on the counter next to the hatch facing the customers. The downlights that she had attached round the hatch and the amber lights for the range made the little kitchen feel intimate, cosy and interesting. She wanted their customers to look forward to them coming into their streets. She wanted them to think, "There's Fergie coming, quick, get him up, get the purse before we miss him." She wanted it to be a success, and for the whole world to see him as she saw him. Fergie had sat forlornly in the shadows of the cab, peeling tatties, while Madison Lee had brought the place to life. Each tatty, he swore, was his last. By the time they were ready to leave, he had peeled 3. He wanted to tell her that that's all they would need tonight. But when she climbed between the seats and gave him a scathing look because of his tatty numbers, he couldn't be bothered with the grief involved in explaining the new plan. She wanted to tell him that because of his wee nap, she was having to heat the oil in both the fryer and the chip box while they were driving to the first stop, plus peel tatties in the meantime. But she couldn't be bothered with the grief involved in listening to his excuses. Fergie drove the van out the yard. It bumped down one of the potholes. "God's sake," Madison Lee said when she noticed the oil sloshing in the fryers. Fergie thought that she was again referring to his low tatty count. Riley started the escort when he saw the van turn down out of Factory Place and make its way towards him. He crunched it into first gear and it spluttered and lurched out onto the road. He kept it in second as he watched the headlights of the van in his rear view mirror. Both vehicles approached the Canal Street roundabout, the van catching up quickly now. Everything was going according to plan. Easy money, he thought. Then a taxi shot out a Park End Road and came right up behind the escort and in between Riley and the chip van. Taxis were on Riley's top 5 most hated road users, along with bus drivers, cyclists, pensioners and Audis. Therefore, he didn't consider this development a problem for the plan, but actually an improvement on it. 10 yards before the junction, he pressed down on the brake pedal so hard that he could feel the vibration of the tyres tearing on the road through his shin bone. The chip van ploughed into the taxi. A bathtub of hissing oil swept through the air and into the cab. It thickly coated the windscreen, the ceiling, the console, and the 2 people who were strapped into their seatbelts. It stuck to what it coated and dripped from the sun visors. "That's a good name for a chip van," said one paramedic to the other when they drew up in the ambulance. She was referring to the decals on the back doors of the van. It was a mural. It read, "The Last Supper," in white lettering, and below it was an amateur painting of Jesus Christ in his robes, sitting at a table with his open palms to each side of a newspaper wrap of fish and chips.